4 years later, I had a hit on my life. I had to get my family out of town for a few days. I went into state police custody. We stepped on a pretty sophisticated heroin distribution ring with a national gang coming in from Detroit. And, I had a 2-year-old, and my wife was pregnant with my daughter, my middle child, Sophie, at the time. And my folks were like, is this really what we signed up for?
Today's episode is going to be probably one of the more interesting ones on our path to 100 episodes. The gentleman I have with me today is an executive at a big corporation. He's also an attorney. He was also the former district attorney, the youngest one ever at the time in the state of Pennsylvania, a sports agent, a dad. This guy's been, when I first met him, he was like going over to Russia to do stuff like with the boxing community, which I thought was very fascinating and interesting. He's probably done a lot of other things I don't even know about. I'm not even sure if he's allowed to talk about it. But he's also one of my friends and somebody I've always looked up to, even though we're the same age, because he's had such a fascinating career. And he's still got another good 20, 30 years left.
Oh, man.
Oh, and a politician. Hold on. And the worst part, a politician
in recovery. I always say I'm a politician in recovery. Ben,
welcome, Steve Toprani.
Ben, it's so cool to be here with you. When you started the podcast, and I've watched its growth and trajectory, right? I always thought I'd be an earlier guest, but like I really feel like I'm in a seat of honor being close to 100 because you've told so many unique stories, and you've had like so many people just bring life wisdom to the show. So it's really cool to be here with you. Finally, number 90, what?
I don't know. This could be 98 probably.
98's good.
Yeah.
We'll work with it. But it's good to be here with you, my man. Thank you.
Well, I was giving you some time. It's kind of like a fine wine. You gotta give it some time to breathe. And so, I wanted you to, get some more life experience.
You were hoping I'd get into something crazy between then and now.
Well, I feel like you have. I mean, this whole being a corporate executive and then even doing some law stuff like on the side, like for like you were just telling me before, like for municipalities. And I don't even know if are you doing any like personal stuff, like defending people?
From time to time.
Like, just for fun? Is it like a passion project?
Yeah, you know what? I do it. I think I'm at the stage in my career where I don't have to be greedy. Like young lawyers, when they start out, you have to take everything. Like people always say they want to specialize. And I've always said, you don't pick a path, your clients pick one for you, right? You go where the opportunities are. Now I'm in a position where I could help my friends and neighbors. And that's what I try to do. Like I'm pretty fortunate in that I don't need to have like a retail law practice. So I still do some of that stuff on the side. It keeps you sharp. You know what I mean? I still like get excited when I walk in a courtroom, stand in front of a judge and make an argument. So, you never want to lose that edge. That keeps me it keeps my edge sharp.
But you played both sides, right?
For sure.
And so early on in your career, this is before I even met you. I mean, I moved to Monongahela in 2010, and you were already the district attorney.
Yeah, I was elected in 08.
And so I didn't even get to know you because you're busy working, and I was like a nobody anyway. And at the end of the day, and I remember seeing your name, hearing about you, right, just from being in the town, thinking it was almost like you were mythical to me because I was I didn't grow up with you, right? But like everyone else knew you, like it was like, oh, that's little Stevie, and like
man, it's the weirdest life experience. I think everybody should run for public office one time, like putting your name on your shirt, and knocking on people's doors, and trying to convince them that you have a plan that's better than the other guy's plan or the other girl's plan.
Sounds like roofing, starting a roofing company.
I guess it's all like marketing and sales, right? But yeah, that was like an interesting time in my life. The pressure of public office and the definition of public office and the way people just view you. Like it's funny to hear you describe me that way because being in public office was like almost an out of body experience for me. Like I knew who I was going in, but then people referred to me by like title and position and, what was in the newspaper. And I always felt that was like a weird contradiction. Like it was a battle between like who you were and who you went home at night as and what your expectations were. So that was always like a unique part of the journey. And unfortunately, you're right. I mean, that was like a 24-hour a day job, and it didn't really lend itself to like having friends, playing golf,
you were
raising children.
Well, you
know what I mean?
You didn't have to campaign or run or anything like that, right? Like you were just like, you were busy working. And so I came over here because I had just been convicted of, these small drug trafficking charges in Ohio. My uncle basically called me up because he could see like he had an opportunity. He'd be like, oh, I can get my good nephew. We can turn his life around. He can move over here. And
it's amazing stuff. Man.
And so I was that. So me at 29, it was like probably felt like the lowest point of my life. You at 29 are at the highest point of your life.
Yeah, it was.
It's just it's a wild it's just a wild thing to think about. And now here we are sitting here just on a journey of life. Yep. How did you end up did you want to become the district attorney?
No, I never considered it.
Tell me when you go to college to be a lawyer, is it because you couldn't pass med school, or did you really want to be a lawyer?
I went to law school on a whim. All my law school classmates are really smart, focused, motivated people who had a life path. And, I tried to buy into that linear thought, this is what I'm going to do over the stage of my career. And I always wanted to get into public service.
Why?
I always felt that was just my calling. There's no real explanation for it. It's in you or it's not. I wanted to give to my community. Our areas where you lived with me, it was a very tough area, right? Economic decline, rise of crime, just really difficult issues. Very proud, focused, good people, just a lot of problems. So I grew up in that crucible where, it was I wanted to give back to the community. I've always said that luck is the confluence of preparedness and opportunity. And I'd always prepared to run for office, but it was something I envisioned doing later in life. And we had a notoriously corrupt DA. No one would challenge him. And people just started whispering in my ear, hey, you're a lawyer, you're a good person, you have ideas. My clients, my neighbors, community leaders.
You were you were
29 years old.
29 years old. What were you doing before that? Did you have were you just working at a law office?
Yeah,
just
I hung a shingle. I started work at the governor's office, and it was not the most rewarding experience. It gave me a lot of access, right? I was an in-house lawyer for 2 governor's administrations, and I looked at the people I worked with, and they were all counting down the salary chart. I have 20 years to retirement. This is what, and it just stifled creativity and service. And I was I'm going to go hang a shingle, and I did. And one of my best friends from law school, he and I hung a shingle in South Fayette Township. Practiced law together for 4 years. I took him with me to the DA's office. So I was just out there, hustling cases, working for clients, getting involved in causes, helping community stuff. You find out when you become a lawyer, everybody in your family all of a sudden wants a will for free, and people want to bring you into different things. Oh, we need a lawyer on our board. So I had some neat opportunities as a result of what I did for a living, and it just all kind of came together. It was scary, you know what I mean? There was no playbook for it. 67 DAs in Pennsylvania. I was the youngest by 15 years. Pretty wide margin.
Has there ever been a younger one since?
No.
So you're still,
so.
you still hold the record?
I'm still a record holder. There was a guy who was appointed in one of the northern,
appointed. You ran and won in public opinion.
Knocked on doors and won a popular vote.
How close was it?
Wasn't close at all.
Do you think that was more? Do you think that was more of a result of the other guy was so terrible, or do you think it was a result of you going out and giving the people the vision?
What's weird is it wasn't known. His misdeeds were only known in the legal community. So a lot of it was I would tell people the guy I'm running against is corrupt. And they're yeah, sure he is. The feds actually raided the DA's office the morning after the election when they found out I won. My very first call was from an FBI agent at 6 a.m. Got me out of bed. He was congratulations, Mr. DA. I just want to let you know we're raiding the district attorney's office today with search warrants.
Well, thank God it was on your first day, not your last day.
Right. Yeah, you never want it on your last day. But yeah, so it was flying without a net.
So it's almost like the movies or something like that. They could have, that story just up into that point. I just got done watching Mayor of Kingstown. That's a wild story, and I watch movies like The Firm and there was the other movie that what was that other movie? A Runaway Jury, and just like some of this intense, like just adrenaline pumping, like activity, right? That's happening that the average person, me including, like has no idea what's actually going.
I wish I filmed most of my days,
because you did some incredible things after you got in. I mean, you've told me some of these stories, which, I wish we probably don't have time to go into all. We could actually probably do a separate podcast. Just a Toprani podcast on all the cold cases that you revived. You told me about a lady you met at the grocery store one time at the Giant Eagle in Carroll Township.
True story.
That just give me that really quick, because
I was in Fisher Heights Giant Eagle. I just won election. People were coming up to me. I was in the newspaper, and this woman came up to me, and I vaguely knew her from the community, and she grabbed my hand and she held him tight, and she said, "Will you get justice for my son?" And I said, "Ma'am, who's your son?" And she told me, she said, "His name's Jerry Cushy. He went missing in 2001. This was 2008. She said, we've tried to investigate it. They went on Montel Jordan, talked to psychics, did everything they could do to try to find their loved one." And she said, will you solve his case for me?" And I said, "Yes, I will." And then I thought, what the hell did I just commit myself to? And man, God works. Just put me in position to be able to look into it. I got some grants to do cold cases with the state police. That was my very first case I decided to call. We ran a grand jury. We arrested, 200-300 people that we turned into witnesses and got statements from. And, after a 1.5-year process, we were able to get a grand jury presentment, which is a charging document in a case where there was no body and it was just a missing person. We made arrests within a couple of days. One of the defendants we arrested decided to cooperate. Took us on a long march. We walked 1.5 miles into the woods in South Union Township, Fayette County. And after about an hour of digging, we hit bone. And they had a funeral. We had convictions. Man, I get emotional talking about it.
I am vibrating right now.
It was just an incredible ride, and to be able to stand in court the days that the men responsible for his death entered guilty pleas, and to attend a funeral where this family always had doubt. They held on to hope that one day he would walk through the door. And this was 10 years after it happened, and I solved 9 cold cases. And I was very proud to be able to do that work, because it brings so much closure to families and communities that, man, if that was the only thing I did in 4 years, that was meaningful to me. And I still carry that with me. I get a little emotional talking about it, because I can't explain it. It just happened. It was a lot of work, but man, I believe that was God at work too.
Yeah, and I knew that story before my brother was murdered, that you did all of that. And I remember you were one of the first people I called, because they didn't know who shot my brother. It was they had no idea. And it took them 18 months. And again, my mom was like pins and needles, my brother's wife, just not knowing who did it, obviously.
Every thought of every day.
Yeah.
Never put it down.
And then trying to and the detective, was really, really nice to my mom, and was able to try to give him updates, but it's always, they're general updates. They're very vague. They can't say a lot anyway. Right. And I know what that feeling is like when you're in the courtroom, you feel like you can at least have that closure.
It's a step.
Did you think when you were in the middle of it, did it feel like you were in a movie, or were you just doing it and you just
it was out of body, man. It was an out of body experience.
It's you never because you're probably moving so fast. I'm assuming that you never had time to sit still and probably just take it all in and we're like, wow, I'm actually doing this. I'm actually the guys on the movie. Because you even told me a story where you're putting on the freaking. You're putting on the vest, you're literally going in right behind the cops, literally with the badge on, and the DA, the actual DA is out there with the cops.
Listen, if I was going to trust them to go through a door, they need to trust that I was behind them. That's just how it works. You got each other's back, and yeah, it was probably more dangerous. I probably made the job more dangerous than I needed to. I was a cowboy, man. You know what? I used my youth and inexperience at the time as a motivator, and I was like,
ambition.
I'm going to do this job better than anybody that's done it. That was my goal, and I lived it. And it didn't. I didn't really appreciate the experience until I was out of it. What's funny is now it's when I put my bio together, the very last sentence in my bio was Steve Toprani was a former district attorney of Washington County, period. That's it. All that experience, all that time, it's just one single sentence now. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I've been able to do so many other different things, but that was a really important period of my life. I couldn't have done it forever. The job is just like too corrupt, too corrosive.
Especially if you're doing it right, though.
If you're doing it the right way,
Like,
you're always pressured. And I knew I wanted to get in, make a change, and then pass the reins. And I was able to do that. And two of my great friends in this world, Gene Vitone and Jason Walsh, succeeded me, and they're carrying the torch. And they each brought their own leadership style. So we were able to build on it. That's what I care about.
In Washington County,
Little Washington County, PA,
is a better place.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is.
I think somebody should make a movie about that. I mean, I really do.
I was offered a book deal, but you know what? I'm too lazy to.
No. Lazy's not the right word.
No, you know what it is? I'm too avoidant. I don't want to confront. I don't want to unearth those ghosts. I'm not ready to yet. I'm just not. It's a heavy position.
Why?
I don't know. You know, politics is twisted. I've just now gotten to the point where I can like discuss these things like candidly. You know, I ran for legislative office a couple years ago, and the most frustrating part about it is that in America's two-party system, like, people really don't care about your values. They want you to subscribe to theirs. Like, that's what it's all about, and it's so inauthentic. And I've always fought against that. You know, like a DA is a little different, right? That's like you're committed to justice. That's different. But politics always wants to nail you down on an issue, right? So like it's always been difficult for me to talk about that because I've always flirted with running for office again. And I did run for office unsuccessfully. I actually ran the closest race in the history of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. I lost by 7
I still
votes.
Can't believe you got beat. Because
I
know the guy that beat you.
I know.
And I'm
man,
like,
thanks. Let's not.
I mean, like, that goes.
Can we cut the microphones?
Well, that
goes. Say
goes.
something about that.
No, I hear you, but like that goes to show you. It almost feels like this presidential election that we got coming up. Like if it goes the way that it could go,
man,
it's almost. Well, it's just almost. No, I mean I know both choices are kind of out there, but like at the end of the day, but if it goes the other way, again, you almost wonder.
That's a pretty good impersonation, by the way.
Is this even real?
I don't
like
know.
it's like are we just in a matrix? Because like do we even actually get is it foolish to think that we actually get to make these decisions?
No, we don't make any decisions.
But we go out and like run around. You're going knocking doors. People are going to be like they're going to show up to vote. Like all this pomp and circumstance happens. And at the end of the day, like yeah, it's just weird. And then here's the other thing that I find interesting about you, which you ran district attorney as a Republican.
Yep.
You then converted to Democrat to win. And tell me, I think I know these answers, but I just want to hear them straight from your mouth. Tell me why. Tell me how that happens in politics, especially like local politics. Obviously, national politics like that hardly ever probably works. I mean, a couple of times I think was it Specter did it in Pennsylvania?
He sure did.
He's one of the bigger guys. But like, tell me about what your choice was to do that, and like, how do you? Yeah, talk to me about that.
I don't fit neatly in a political box, and I've learned that over the years. Like, man, I'm as purple as it gets. Like, I'm a moderate. Like, I have like I believe in fiscal conservatism for whatever that means, but I also think like how people live their lives and what they choose to do is not something that government should be involved in. So like, I don't fit neatly, and politics. We have a two-party system, and the pendulum swings between left and right. And sometimes it goes really far right, and sometimes it goes really far left. And I'm a middle guy. I'm a centrist. So I ran as a Republican. I registered to vote at 18 as a Republican. I changed parties to run against a Republican. But I thought his views were too far right for the area that I wanted to represent. You know, like he wasn't talking about the issues that I felt were important. The taxes people pay and job opportunities and, providing somewhat of a safety net. I don't believe in just having like a pure welfare state, but like I do think people that have difficulty, the government can step in and prop them up and make them fit better in society and produce more. I believe in criminal justice reform. That's a hard thing to do as a Republican. One of the things that I ran on was sentencing reform, which the legislature actually finally did. It took some Republicans to break away from that law and order mentality. You know, I used to get so offended when I'd hear right-wing people talk about being tough on crime. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, we just warehouse people. Like, let's be smart on crime. Like let's reach into people, reach into their hearts and change them. You know what I mean? If they have an addiction issue, let's fix it. Like, we have that ability. You could court order it. Those are the things I cared about, like, you know, repairing people's criminal records so they could get productive jobs and not be embarrassed, and volunteer to coach their kids' baseball teams. You know, well, like
I was doing.
Things.
So here's the thing, and I'm a good person. I got into some bad things in my late 20s, mixed up with the wrong people, whatever. Mm-hmm. I literally would have had a markup. I mean, I had a felony on my account. I would have never been able to get a real job ever again if it wouldn't have been for like this blue collar, you know, industry, like the roofing industry, you know, and being able to do that. And then, you know, luckily I was able to, somehow I married an attorney, and she was able to write things I got my felonies expunged.
Sure.
Because which came into play when I started my business, because then when I wanted to be on the internet, like on Google and like Angie's List and Home Advisor, they literally do background. They do right. Well, they do background checks, and I would have never been able to be on there. Like, and then it's an issue, but like I'm a good, like, just because I made like, you know, a poor choice at one time in my life, and people make choices, they just don't get convicted of felonies for them, and they're probably actually even worse most of the time. The way you treat people, you know, I always told people I was the best. I said I was the nicest drug dealer there ever was. I always made sure they had their good stuff. I always made sure to take care of them. If they were like getting to it, like if they were like doing too much, like I would say, no, I can't take care of you, because I didn't want to, like, you know.
You'd slow them down a little.
Yeah, like I know that's wild and crazy. I kind of joke around. I kind of joke around about it now, but it was like, yeah, I was just like, that was my first like venture into entrepreneurialism. It did teach me a lot, right?
And
like,
listen, I've met a lot of highly sophisticated drug dealers over the years, both as clients and people I prosecuted, who would be CEOs of companies if given different life circumstance.
Yeah, and get around the right people. And again, and it was one of those things where, like, that's what I appreciated about you so much. It's like you didn't judge me. You didn't judge me for my past. You didn't judge me for where I was at. And that was really, I don't know, that's important. But I can also see why now. You've been around a lot, and you've seen a lot of different things, and you've also seen probably the guys you went to college with that didn't turn out so well either.
Yeah, man.
And like sure. on the straight and narrow path, you know, and that predictable.
We're all an accumulation of our choices. And, you know, nobody like sets out to say, well, I mean, few do. Like, they're just gonna be like designing criminals. Most people just like kind of fall into situations, circumstance. You know, it's not necessarily some evil intent. It's just the way life happens, and life's tough. It's tough. There's no doubt about it. I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, I always tell my oldest son's 15, and I tell him every day, I'm like, make good choices. I don't care what you do, just make good choices, because I've seen one choice lead down a path, you know, both directions, for the better and for the worse.
Yeah, and if you make a bad choice today, you can always make a better choice tomorrow and like fix it. Talk to me about what it was like for your parents when they see young Stevie, and then Stevie wants to go to college, and then Stevie wants to be an attorney, and then Stevie wants to run for office, and the exposure that puts on a family. And
man, I scare the hell out of them all the time.
Still all the time to this day, probably.
My parents are 74, and I know my mom will be watching this. She still looks for me in the newspaper, and she's my greatest support. She knocked on doors for me. I'll never forget when I went to their house, stopped in February 2008-7 before I ran, and I was like, hey guys, looking to run for public office, and I need your help. And yeah, they were worried. They're like, well, are you sure this is what you want to do? And I've done that to them now several times. Yeah, anytime I stop at my mom's house unannounced, she's like, oh God, what are we doing now? Where are we going? What's your plan? And I've just told them, you know, just got to roll with it and be adaptive. And you know, they've enjoyed it. I think they're glad that I'm not in public life as much as I used to be. It's just a different way of living. It's hard to really explain. But when you're a countywide office holder in what I felt was the most important position in the county, and I say that humbly, you know, you get a lot. You get a lot of people support you. You get a lot of criticism. I've had to walk out of meals, you know what I mean, because somebody I prosecuted was serving us food or put their kid away. You know what I mean? Like, so they always felt it more than I did. Like, I could dissociate. Like, I'm sure it's like a character character trait, character flaw, maybe. Like I could disassociate from it.
It doesn't mean it's not a.
But
I guess
like
it's a flaw in certain areas.
Your family
it's
always
also a
feels
strength.
the worst.
That's also a strength in certain areas too, right? Like not being able to hold on to stuff.
They probably felt it more than I ever did, for certain.
Was there? Did they ever give me an instance both on the positive and the negative of like, them telling you either to like be careful or not do something, and also like a time when they like said supported you, like give me.
Man, I got both ends of the book.
Yeah, give me the good ones for the podcast.
Man, I remember the good ones. I remember election night. The race was over by 8:05. Polls closed at 8:00. I won in a 2-1 margin. Like the community was really with me, and like people lined up for hours. Like it was the longest night of my life, and my folks were right there with me. My wife, we didn't have kids at the time, and they got to experience that, which was really cool. Like the public coming out and saying, we supported you. It was genuine. We stand with you. It was inspiring. You know what I mean? That was like a call to duty. And then 4 years later, I had a hit on my life. I had to get my family out of town for a few days. I went into state police custody. We stepped on a pretty sophisticated heroin distribution ring with a national gang coming in from Detroit. And, I had a 2-year-old, and my wife was pregnant with my daughter, my middle child, Sophie, at the time. And my folks were like, is this really what we signed up for? Like, do we really want to live this? They had to go out of town for a few days. We ended up arresting a number of people across different counties. I kept it out of the newspaper because I didn't want it to be a distraction. It was also the year I would have run for re-election, and I didn't want people to think I was putting it out there to bolster my chances at the polls. And so they felt both ends of it. They felt the support and they felt the threat, and that threat's very real. And especially when you have young kids. And I was like, listen, they were right. Pump the brakes, change gears. So I probably would have done it another 4 years at least. But
if that wouldn't happen,
yeah, that was a primary motivator for me to step away. And it was hard to explain because I kept it out of the paper. So people were like, I was 32. I was flirting with running for attorney general. They were talking to me about running for Congress. Like all these higher positions. People were like, why are you stepping away now? You can hold this for life. I'm like, you don't realize how short life can get.
When was the first time you talked about that?
First time I talked about publicly?
No, first time publicly is like where you talked about like, having a hit out for you.
Probably today.
Oh, really?
I mean, I've talked around it.
But it's not like public information.
No, I've always tried to keep that. It was very personal. When you have gunmen like show up around your house and case you and have plans, and we just had a great network of intelligence. We had confidential informants in a couple locations, and they actually overheard the plans. People were meeting to do it. It was organized, and they would have been successful, man. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I mean, like it's not. I mean, no offense, but like the Valley's not that sophisticated. So, like, I mean, like, I feel like, and you still, you know what I love about you too, that you still live in the same place.
I won't leave.
That you've lived.
I probably will leave someday, but it's
I know, but like that's incredible to me. And that goes to show like the realness of you, of like that you really are committed to the people of like your area, and like you are one of the ones, like everyone, Joe Montana left, gone, he ain't coming back. Yeah. Like that's where he's from, right? Yep, and like I'm sure a lot of people like have left, I'm friends with Jim Renacci. I don't know if you know who he is, the Ohio congressman.
Sure.
Yeah, and so it was interesting because my
picture's near his in the hallway at Ringgold High School. He built a life in Ohio.
As he was getting ready to run for Ohio Congress, I was actually moving over here, and I thought it was interesting because like I was like, at 29 years old, I was starting to understand like, oh, maybe I should understand like what this whole politic thing is. And I started like, going down a rabbit trail, and then this guy from my church said, hey, come to like one of these like campaign things. And I met Jim Renacci, and I was like, and then 2 months later, I was like, hey, I can't help you anymore over here, but like I'm moving over here. And he's like, that's where I'm from. I'm like, small world, man. Yeah. So
it's crazy.
But yeah, you've, and then you talk about, we talked about mom and dad a little bit, but like, you've talked about the wife and the kids, and I know you have 3 beautiful kids and an amazing wife, but like, what was that like? First of all, let's talk about the story, because you have one of the most unique and interesting stories of how you met your wife. So talk about that a little bit.
She tells the story way better than I do, but I had just graduated college. I was traveling in Europe with my parents, and she was in school traveling with her parents. And somehow we ended up on the same tour bus in Paris, France. And we were touring the Normandy D-Day battlefields. I was like a World War II history major, and her grandfather fought in Normandy. So like we got on this bus, and we were the only young people. Like everybody, we had a number of World War II vets on the bus at the time. It was in 2001. And she sat down next to me, and she started talking to me, and it's never stopped. So that's how we met. People always like to say, wow, you met in Paris, but like it wasn't under the Eiffel Tower. You know what I mean? It wasn't like in a movie. It was on a tour bus. And she was in school in Alabama. She went to the University of Alabama. I was at Duquesne here in Pittsburgh, and we did the long distance thing, and she decided to move up here. And, you know, she's like a true Pittsburgh transplant. You know, I get the urge to move sometimes. I'll be like, hey, do you want to go south? You want to go to Florida? You want to go? She's like, no, I like it here. So, you know, here's where we are.
Yeah.
So
that's a wild. That's what I mean. You have a movie like I could just see the movie of like young up and coming politician running for DA. When did you get married? How like what year did you get married?
2006.
So it was a couple years. Right. It was a couple years. Yeah, that's right. We'll edit it out.
Edit that out. Later. 2007.
Sorry, Jennifer. Like no big deal. What? So yeah, 2 years before you ran. So what were those conversations like? Because obviously, you know, you didn't even know you were going to have run. You know, so when you met her, so this is what's interesting about the life of you know, I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and to me, like, you may not like be like the typical entrepreneur, but you definitely are all entrepreneur. Like your brain is wired for that. Yes,
I have the spirit. Yeah,
you have the spirit, and like the way that your life changes and transforms, and you move, like it's just like an entrepreneur. Rather, like so it's very interesting. But like your wife, you had no idea, you know, you didn't even know what you were going to do. Your wife definitely did not sign up for some of this stuff. So like, tell me about the challenges that come with that. Like, what were those conversations like early on before you running? What was it like during? Like, what was it like to come home at night and like have to share some of that stuff?
I'll tell you. It's been the same from the beginning. It's just communication, and she probably wouldn't admit it. She likes when I come home with ideas. You know what I mean? Like it keeps. She
likes the cowboy.
Like she likes the cowboy nature of me.
So most of us that are married, it's like we're usually married to the safe choice. Like they're the safe ones. We're the crazy ones, but they love the excitement. I believe deep down inside
where we were going, but she was always in for the ride. And
that's so true.
Yeah. So I mean, we've always had those conversations. Before we got engaged, I told you I had a great job, government service. I was just so frustrated with it. Like I didn't feel fulfilled. And I came home with her one night. We were living in an apartment, scraping to get by. You know, I think I was making like $40,000 a year, and I had benefits, which was like really great when you have law school debt. And I came home and like, I can't do this anymore. It was 2 weeks before we were to get married, and I said, I want to quit my job. I want to hang a shingle. And she's like, are you out of your mind? I said, well, yeah. And she said, well, how are you going to make a living? I said, well, you know, I'm going to partner with my buddy Dennis, and we're just going to do it. And I had one client. It was a divorce client. I never handled a divorce case before. And she paid us a small retainer, and that helped me qualify for an SBA loan. I started a business literally over a dinner table at Mad Max with margaritas. It might have been the margaritas, come to think of it. But yeah, so like we started a business. I hung a shingle. I loved that. It was like flying without a net. And I think that's what's like kind of carried me through. I was 25, you know what I mean? Like my law license was a year old, and I hung a shingle and made a good living doing it. And because I was open to the experience, I had clients take me in directions I never thought I'd go, in politics, in business, in sports, you know, in law in general. And that's what I always liked about what I do as a lawyer. It's the connection. It's a connection. I don't try to be the answer person. I like to help people find their answers, right? Like the pressure of a young lawyer is like they're in law school mentality. They think like, oh, I hear a problem, I got to find a solution. I have to hand it to you. Well, that's not effective. You know, all relationships are two-way streets.
The answers are all within inside of us.
Yeah, sometimes it's just giving somebody the tools to unlock their own answers. And when you do that, that's when you have synergy, and that's when you build real relationships, and that's what's exciting to me. That's what's cool.
How, she's on for the ride. Obviously, when you go to tell her you're going to, quit your job, go start your business. Cool. You start your business. Did that for a couple of years. Probably made really good money. Yeah, obviously more than 40 grand a year, probably. I'm assuming. I don't know the details, but then when you go to tour, like, what was the conversation like when did you guys like help decide together that you were going to run for attorney general, or was it, or not attorney general, district attorney? Was it like the same thing as like when you were going to start your business, you just came and said, I think this is what I'm going to do?
It was more asking for forgiveness than permission.
Oh, did you already like fill out the paperwork?
I basically told her, like, I have a committee and we're going to do this. And she said, I support you. She said, if that's your calling, she said, I know you have a gift you'll bring and I'll stand by you.
And do you think it's because that she already had the one situation under her belt where you did that, came through, everything was fine?
No, I scared the hell out of her.
Again?
Man. Come on. Scared the hell out of her. But she
so every time along this journey for like the last 15, 20 years, you just keep scaring the hell out of her. And she just...
the way my mind works, like there's linear thinkers and then there's depth thinkers, right? Like you could move down the line, but move up and down around the line. And I've always found the depth. Like when I was DA, I told her I wanted, I had that issue. I told her I wanted to get back, and I really did. I wanted to get back to being a lawyer. And I joined a law firm, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go join a law firm. And I stayed there for 4 years. And I went to another law firm, and then I left there, and I went to a mechanical construction company at House. So it was like, I like variety, and I kind of look at my life on like 4-year cycles. Like every 4 years, I get the itch to do something different. It's like my chemical makeup.
That's why you can't be a good politician, because those guys like to stay there forever.
They like to stay forever, and I'm not into that longevity. I'm just not. Like it's.
So yeah, because that had to be weird, because you probably I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that being the district attorney of Washington County probably doesn't pay that much.
Yeah, I think it was like $150 a year, but it was in the newspaper, and everybody thought it was an extraordinary king's ransom.
Well, no, well, that compared to like where you grew up, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like, a lot of my
first year, but it's a step back financially.
Yeah, first year associates at law firms made more than I did.
Yeah, sure. And so like there's another thing. It's like, all right, cool. Like we were broke, now we're making money. Now all of a sudden you want to go back to like this like fixed salary, like with benefit, like all this like regular stuff. That's so interesting. What was it like to have children during those, like, especially those first two kids, during like that time of your life?
I don't know. That's the saddest statement I can give you is I don't know. Man, I really don't know. Jen used to get really upset with me because I'd get Will out of his crib in the middle of the night and I'd hold him. Because that was the only contact I had with him. He was asleep. And I regretted that. I was absent for the first 2 years of his life. Absent. The good news is that, babies usually don't need dads at that age. Like they rely on mom for the care and comfort and doctor's. I never attended a doctor's appointment. That's just being real. I didn't have the luxury of it. In fact, when my daughter was born, true story, I had there was a homicide in Washington County. My chief of staff picked me up from the delivery room. I held her. I stayed with Sophie for about an hour and I left. And I didn't come back for like a day. And I mean, that's what the job required. It's could I have done it differently? Maybe, but it's what I felt was necessary at the time. Be there, be involved. And,
what kind of strain does that put on the marriage?
She probably wanted to kill me.
You don't know that for sure?
No, I'm pretty sure. I sleep like this.
That was the second hit. That was the second hit.
No, listen, man. I mean, I left her alone a lot. And that's tough, that's a big burden, because then she knew like I was out like doing dangerous things, like the situations are volatile. And, that's when I really started to look at the path, and I said, I have to be more involved in my kids' lives. And I'm very grateful to be in the position I am, that I am so immersed in my kids' lives. My oldest Will, we travel the country together, probably 2 weeks a month.
I watch you, man. You're living
quarterback.
Yeah,
and, we go everywhere together.
I see it, and
airplanes.
It couldn't be such a stark difference to at the beginning of Will's life to where Will's at now.
The beauty is he has no idea until he watches this. And I did it for him. I did it for them, for sure.
because like, and I feel like me and you are like similar in that regard. Cause like when I was building Big Fish, you know, Sammy was born in 2014. I started Big Fish in 2015, and I don't remember the first 3 years basically. I mean, like 4 years, like, and then I ended up getting divorced and like after when he was 5 or 6. But now,
yeah, I see you guys now.
But now
incredible.
It's like, yeah. And it's like, man, it's like, I'm so present with them. We do the guys trip thing, like, which is you're doing a guys trip like freaking every week now because like your kid's in football, and I just saw a picture of him with Peyton Manning at the Manning Academy.
He's doing it. He's doing his thing. He's
that's wild, man.
I never thought he would do that. He was always a baseball player. He didn't like getting hit. He broke his collarbone in his very first tackle playing football, and I think that's what made him a quarterback. He never wanted to get hit again. He's got hit a lot. Really proud of the kid. He started as a freshman at Ringgold last year, one of 4 freshman quarterbacks in the Whippeal. Man, I was at UPMC with him every Saturday, it seemed, you know, with some injury. The team went 0-10, dressed like 24 kids. But he got exposure and
adversity. That's adversity.
Yeah,
right? Like, I mean, he got
tough dude.
So like, that's like, you know, I don't know what adversity you faced, you know, when you were 15.
Like
your mom and dad probably sheltered you a little bit, right?
I was an only child.
Yeah. That's why I know that. I was like, and I know like your parents are just like, when you were an only child, you could just tell the way that your mom and dad love you, like, it's just different because it's focused. It's 100%. Like they can give you it all. We're like, you know, you got 3 kids, and like, you know, you got to spread it out a little bit so it gets less focused. But what I find fascinating is that what is Will like? If I ask, like, if Will was sitting in this seat,
he should.
And I've never, you know, I seen Will when he was little and stuff like that. You don't know who I am. But if I started to ask him these questions about like your dad and ask him like does he like how much of this stuff does he know? Does he not know about how wild and up and crazy? Like, I mean, literally like a movie star career. Like
he's perceptive.
But does he know his dad's a cowboy like that? Like
I don't know. He will now.
Like I mean, I'm talking like seriously. Like you could watch a movie where there's that whole thing plays out. And you'd be like, dude, my dad lived that. Like, that's my dad's life.
You know what it is, man? It's a cloud. And I want to give him room to grow on his own. Like, I don't want him to feel the pressure of who I was or who I am. Like, I want him to be himself. He is a natural born leader. Dude, he is just, you should have him on here. He's an interesting guy. Like, for a 15-year-old, he's really with it. I'm so proud of him. He's always been, like, wise beyond his years. I remember he was, like, 4 or 5 years old. And, I put him in the car with me and I put him in my lap. And I was like, hey, you want to drive? You know, he sit in my lap. I thought it'd be fun. And he freaked out on me. He's like, Dad, how can you be so irresponsible? I can't drive a car. And I'm like, you're in my lap. But like Will's always been ahead of himself. And
that's good.
You know, he's a force, dude. You know, it was a fun experience last year. It was tough, you know.
0-10. That's a lot of adversity. And have to keep getting up every Friday.
I had to fight with so many band parents. You know what I mean? You sit in the stands and hear them. You know, your kid get hit, fumble the ball. You know what I mean? You know, Quad A was tough. You know, kids he played against have D1 scholarships on the defensive side of the ball, and you know, you watch him and you see him limp back up from getting hit, and you just like hold your breath, like you're gonna get up, you're okay. Then you hear somebody behind him like, that quarterback sucks. He gave away the ball and you want to choke him. But that was the hardest part for me. But he internalized all that. And I remember he was playing a game against Laurel Highlands, and it was one that they could have won. And I think it was in the 3rd quarter. He had a nice drive going, completed a couple passes in a row, marching the field. And he got hit after he delivered a pass. And the Whippeal has a rule. If you strike the back of your helmet on the turf, you already automatically go into protocol. Right, for concussion, and I got on the medical bench with him, and he's spitting, he's throwing his helmet, and he was so pissed off, and he's like, Dad, I need to go back in, like I could score here. And I'm like, dude, like you probably have a concussion, you know, like let's not do this. And but he's a warrior, you know, he wanted to be right back in there. So I give him credit. I wouldn't have done it at 15. No chance.
Yeah, no,
but it's fun. It's fun raising a quarterback. They like think different. They all look and act the same. You know, I had him down in Louisiana last week at Manning camp, and you know he worked out with a lot of top college and NFL guys, and I could just see the pull. That it's pulling them in that direction. So
when you start hanging out, they always say you're a product of the environment, right? And so if you if you're always feel like you're I always want to be the worst person in the room, right? Like I always want to have the 5 successful people around me and be like, all right, because then you want to be more like that, right?
He says the same thing. He's like, if I'm the best kid on my team, I'm on the wrong team. And that's perception. That's real. That's real. Like,
man, to have that at 15 is incredible.
He gets it.
What a head start.
Yeah, hope it works.
What a head start.
But either way, I mean, he's I'm sentimental. I hope he follows in my footsteps, and maybe one day we practice law together. After he hangs up his helmet and cleats, we'll see.
Well, you guys are practicing people. Law is just a vehicle.
It is. It's all it is, a vehicle. You're 100% right. Everything we do, vocations are vehicles.
Getting ready for the show, you told me that because me and you, we talk every once in a while, but I don't get all the nitty gritty. You told me you're in the sports agent world. Find that very fascinating.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting progression, uncharted. Clients take you places, and I had an opportunity 10, 12 years ago to start working with Roy Jones Jr., boxing Hall of Famer. And
that's when I first started met you. When you were going to Russia, and you were because he was celebrated in Russia, right? It's
he had Russian citizenship, and we went over there and met with President Putin at the Kremlin, right before right before things got really crazy on the world scale, and. So I had always got referrals hey, talk to this athlete, talk to that athlete, and I befriended an entrepreneur. He's a builder in South Florida, and he wanted to get into the sports agency. He was a former college football player who was injured, wasn't able to continue his athletic career. Been very successful, and we're like, hey, people are talking to you about it, people are talking to me about it. Why don't we put our forces together? So he's in Miami, and he brings a unique market because all the athletes in America are there. It's particularly in their off seasons. Who doesn't want to live in paradise?
Yeah, it's isn't that show Ballers or something
for sure.
that?
They're all there. They're all there. So we've been doing it now for a couple years, and I have a partner. He's an NFL PA certified contract advisor. He handles the pros. I handle high school and college kids. That's what I like is finding young athletes and helping them get to their dreams. And it's cool. I take Will on our visits, and they'd rather talk to him. I kind of specialize with quarterbacks by default.
Dude, you got gray hair, bro. You're
so
old.
Much, man.
You're old.
They don't resonate with me.
Yeah, you're too old.
45, 46. They don't want to talk to me. They're 20, 21, 22-year-old. My 15-year-old's a lot closer in age and interest than they are. And but it's cool because he gets to see exposure to. It takes the mystery away. I think back. I've always been a fan, right? And I played sports, but I was always a fan. I remember when I was 15, I had posters of probably Barry Bonds in my room, right? And athletes, Ken Griffey Jr. But I never got to touch them. I'd met Ken Griffey Jr.
Well, he was a Denora. Yeah, didn't his dad was born in Denora? Was it Griffey technically? Was his dad in Denora at the time when he was born?
Yeah,
but they were playing for the Reds?
Cincinnati for high school when his dad was with the Reds. But my best friend growing up was his cousin, so I got to interact with him a little bit. But what I'm trying to show Will is I'm trying to take the mystery out of it, because if you see it as what it requires, you could be realistic about the approach. So last week he was with Will Howard from Ohio State, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, some really top quarterbacks. We were walking through the airport one day after a camp, and Drake May, number 3 quarterback taken in the draft last year by the Patriots, said, "Hey, Will." And they high-fived each other because he was his camp counselor at a QB camp that we went to. And it was really cool. He could see now what the progression looks like. Whether he gets there or not, I guarantee you he'll have clients one day that he's going to help get there too.
Once you're able to see it, once you're able to see it, you can it's like R&D. You can rip off and duplicate. You know what I mean? You can somebody else has already done it. You just need to see it. To be able to go out and dream it up on your own and then be able to create it's a lot harder of a path.
And you'll see it as Sammy progresses in sports too. I know he's a soccer football guy, right?
Yeah.
A little baseball too?
No.
He didn't play baseball this year?
Never. He's never. Yeah.
But here's the thing. You'll see this. There's so much bad information out there for parents, and every parent wants to do 2 things: give their kid the best advantage and find people to coach them along that way. And there's just so many sharks out there. I got a call one day. Will has football tape on Huddle website, and this recruiting company called me. They basically said like, hey, if you give us like $2,500 a month, we'll set up college visits and we'll rank him. And I said, well, where would you rank him? They're like, oh, he's probably like top 10 quarterback at his age in the country. I'm like, you guys never even saw him throw a snap. Like, you're just trying to sell me hype.
Yeah, it's like the Inc. 5000.
Yeah,
as long as you apply,
sure.
if you pay, then they'll put you on the list.
I see that in the boxing world. You know what I mean? Like, I remember one time we had a guy who was ranked 40th in the world, and Golden Boy wanted to fight him on one of their cards, and he went from like Ring Magazine's 40th to 20th to 10th to the second contender in the world. And he didn't even lace up his gloves.
Yeah,
it was just hype
marketing.
So like I try to show him like in everything it's relationship driven. If you want to go to a certain school, build relationships there. Like, be honest about it.
I want to
see where you go.
I want to pivot because I want to because I know the people are listening. When you said Putin and you said Russia, we gotta ask a little bit about those experiences and like what that's like. I mean, especially with like where the world is today and like how Putin's probably one of the most vilified people in the whole entire world.
Probably the most powerful. Yeah.
Most powerful too. You think?
I think so.
Well, now, hopefully that'll change in November.
It was fascinating.
That was a personal take. I don't know why I said that. I'm supposed to be agnostic around here.
I was there in 2014 and 2015. And 14 was the Sochi Olympics, and Putin started to annex Crimea. And he did it like while the world was watching. He sent people in, and they destabilized. And next thing you know, like national patriotism. That fervor spread, and they started hoisting Russian flags. And I knew Ukraine was the next step. When we were in Moscow, we were part of some like really interesting conversations. I will tell you this, in 15, I remember I was sitting at dinner with a bunch of Russian oligarchs or businessmen who had very close access to the President Putin. And they asked me, they said, who's going to be your next president? I said, Jeb Bush, because I figured, he'd be the third Bush. He was the establishment's choice. And they gave these big belly laughs. And they said, Donald Trump. And I said, you guys got to be kidding me. He's not even running. They knew something we didn't. And, that year he won the election. And some people have accused Russian interference. And I can't say I saw that firsthand or not, but they certainly had accurate crystal balls. But Russia's a very cool place. They have over 1,000-year history. 20 different ethnic minorities make up the country, so it's big and diverse. We spent a little time in Georgia, Chechnya, mostly in Moscow. But it was interesting. When I was there, Obama was president, and John Kerry was the Secretary of State, and he had the only American diplomatic visit while we were there. We were at the Four Seasons, and he was staying in another section of the hotel. So we were actually there before the U.S. government actually sent representatives into Moscow, which was kind of interesting. But Roy was what's cool is when the wall fell and Russia started to reform in the 90s, they looked up to like Michael Jordan, Roy Jones Jr., and people from that era. And Roy, Champ just built relationships, had boxing schools over there, and Putin became close with him and invited him over to receive citizenship. Which was a really interesting experience. It was like part humanitarian, part sport. We went back and forth over a several-month period.
How did you get, how does Steve Toprani, this kid that grows up in small-town Monongahela, I mean, it's just wild to me, man. Like, all the other stuff that we have on your bio, all that stuff we already talked about, all the professional stuff. And then you have, this little blip of, was it just being in the right place at the right time? Yeah. And then next thing you know, you're rubbing shoulders with Putin and Roy Jones Jr. in Moscow. That's wild to me.
I developed a relationship with Roy over the years. One of my good friends, his wife was his trainer in Pensacola. And my buddy Troy, he played for the Saints and lived in that part of the world. And he had a boxing promotion company and he needed legal help. And, I just started getting involved with that. And I was like, well, I should get involved in the business. And then Roy was actually just starting to retire from his competitive boxing career. He's probably more, I think, of an exhibitionist boxer at this point in time.
Kind of like a Tyson nowadays. Tyson's going to go back out there. 60 years old.
Yeah, he fought Tyson during the pandemic. It all just kind of came together. Roy called me. It was in August of 2015, and he's like, hey, I got this opportunity. You want to go to Russia with me? I was like, yeah, absolutely, I do. And
What'd your wife say about that?
Man, she was glad I came home because Russia's not a place you travel freely. So like we would get visas and plane tickets. And we were 100% control.
Didn't they keep that girl over there for like a little bit of a week or something like that?
So we go over there in December for.
You don't know if you're going to come back for real, bro.
We go over for a fight. There were 20,000 people. All these government people. President Putin was in a box, and Roy gets knocked out in the 4th round, and our flights got canceled. We had a hard time getting home. It was just a whole. It was like living in a spy movie, but like. Russia's a cool place, but very controlled system. You know, like the stuff we do here, you can't do there.
Give me like one example.
You just did. You know, you're talking about like perceptions, like President Biden's weak. If you say that in Russia, you're going to Siberia. Like I sat at tables and people would be like, President Putin. They'd whisper his name. That's the control he has because it's a police state. It's a police state. Like our hotel was bugged. We had a member of the Moscow tourism police follow us everywhere we went. They were like embedded with us.
Just to make sure you guys weren't like spies or something probably. Right?
Yeah. I mean, American money's illegal over there. It destabilizes their currency. So like if you're caught passing American bills, like you'd be arrested for it. Like, so forget Brittany Griner with a little marijuana residue. Like that's
Russia. You tip somebody a $20 bill and you totally ruin it. You ruin them.
They wanted you to trade like, your polo jeans with them, you know what I mean? Because they couldn't get American products. They want it, but it's closed. Like the time I was over there, Facebook was illegal, Twitter was illegal. They had their own versions of that. Netflix, like my Netflix account worked in Germany. As soon as I landed in Russia, service not available because it's a threat to Putin's control over the country. They don't want Western opinions.
What do you? I don't know. Tell me, what do you think is going to happen over the next 10 years with Russia?
I think Russia is going to continue its quest to reintegrate its empire. And it's how the West stands up or doesn't. I mean, I think this Ukraine war has gone on longer than I think anybody expected. I think Putin thought it'd be a 2-month invasion. I'm sorry, he calls it liberation. Like it depends on your perspective.
Sure.
I don't think Russia's the military power that it is, but Putin's ambitions have no boundaries.
But do you think the people there, like the guys that are fighting in the military, like, do you think they really believe in the mission, or do you think that they're just out there just because they're told what to do? They don't have any other choices.
They instituted nationalized mandatory service. So that should tell you everything.
But the heart's not in it, correct? Like it can't be, correct? I mean, they lack heart, right? Is that the difference, like between the American military and like the Russian military? It's just basically like our guys got heart, and they really believe in
we stand for values.
Yeah,
like we stand for concepts bigger.
So how are they ever even going to stand a chance then? Because like I feel like if they can't freaking wipe through Ukraine, no offense, I don't know nothing about politics. I don't know nothing about any of this stuff, but I follow like winning and combat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, like they're not winning, right? Like they're not, it's not clear. I mean, so if they can't get through Ukraine, or is that just the hardest one? If they get through that, then the rest of them will be easier. Like, is it like,
yeah, I'm no expert on Russia, but what I've learned over the years, having been back and forth, studying it and doing business with the Russian Federation, is they don't have clear goals for victory. And Putin's in a position where he cannot compromise. Because the troop loss. I mean, he had an election last year. Navalny, his opponent, went to prison. Right.
That's what they try to do. That's what they try to do over here. They try to do that over here.
He had a dozen generals die under suspicious circumstances, suicides, and falls out of hospital windows. Like that's what happens in Russia.
And but the people are. The media is different over there, right? The people don't know about all this stuff, correct?
No, it's state-sponsored media.
Gotcha.
So, like, people complain about, like, oh, I like Fox News, you like CNN, vice versa.
They only have one.
There, they have TASS, and they've been doing it since Lenin and Stalin, right? So they control all messaging. And it's interesting. Like, I follow a lot of Russian media on Twitter, and if you compare it to, I think American media is largely political. I like BBC and some European channels because they kind of give you the balls and strikes. But if you read it, like it's two completely different descriptions of the universe. You know, it's all propaganda in Russia. All propaganda.
So
that's why they can't.
What do you think ultimately happens?
Influence.
So like 10 years from now, like, because how old's Putin?
I think Putin's in his 60s, right?
Still young, yeah, compared to our two guys up for our election.
Our 80-year-old candidates.
Yeah, guys are freaking. They gotta be in diapers, both of them, pretty soon. Like
crazy.
Anyway,
man. Crazy.
So what do you think actually happens? Like, what's your like? Do you think that he's going to be successful in any way from what his eyes of success are? Do you think it's just going to lead to more like debauchery in the world?
Yeah, I think
do you believe that someone's going to like put him in his place and like be able to like?
I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Close it off.
Yeah, I'm not sure Ukraine is really the issue. Like, he talks about regions that were historically Russian that he wants to liberate. Really, what he wants to do is push NATO back from his borders, right? Because we have massive NATO troop buildup along lines that were drawn in 1948. We're still, in some ways, dealing with those issues. Man, I wish I could tell you. I think it's going to get a lot worse before there's actual peace. Putin's known to fight proxy battles. He props up militant groups around the world, and they destabilize areas. Africa, I think you're going to see civil wars in Africa that are proxied by Russia. I think that's the next playground.
Is that just ambition. To kind of like distract?
He needs resources. Russia is very limited on its resources, oddly. I mean, their economy is entirely dependent upon oil. When I was in Russia, their currency, it's crazy. Like, let's use an example. You have $1,000 in your bank account. Because of the world market, that $1,000 could drop to $600 overnight. And then pendulum up to $1,200 based on oil production. So, that's why I think he's taken efforts to put together different economic unions, you know what I mean, with BRICS and others, to try to fight off Western economic pressures. I mean, we put tremendous sanctions on them. Some of the groups we did business with in Russia they weren't on the sanctions list, but they were on Treasury watch list.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about it because like in the 90s, like with the Gorbachev thing, right? Like, wasn't he like kind of celebrated?
Yeah.
And then and then there was the other guy, Boris Yeltsin.
Yep. What
happened to where like they looked like they were on a better track, right? Like of more of like just chill mode, right?
One thing happened. Putin's ambition. He changed the whole system. He actually changed.
But he was also part of like the night. I mean, he was like
he was KGB officer. That's what people miscalculate with him is, the KGB's influence. I mean, it'd be like us electing a CIA director president.
Interesting.
It's interesting in that he's consolidated power within the executive, but he actually changed our constitution a couple years ago that more power is going to flow to the prime minister, I think in 3 years, which happens to coincide with his constitutional term limit, and he'll be prime minister. So, Putin's set in his nest.
And they can't change the Constitution?
They can't even figure out what his wealth is.
But they can't change.
There's projections he's worth $100 billion.
Well, you just said that it could fluctuate.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like crypto. It's like Bitcoin.
Well, you know what? He and his associates own a lot of real estate, and some of it in Manhattan.
Don't you feel like too, like also speaking of wealth and things like that, there's like, we have the list that, Forbes puts out and people that we know about, right? Do you believe like I do that like, that's not even like a quarter of the list, and like that there's these dudes over in like Dubai and like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait that are never on the list, but like they have to have like gazillion, like we probably don't have words for it, right?
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely true.
Because they don't want to have they don't like to be they don't want to be known for that, or like because then obviously they probably become targets even more so than they probably already are.
That's right.
It's just very fascinating to me. I don't know why we just went on a rabbit trail about politics.
I didn't expect to go there today. That's cool.
And I don't even actually know if that was like interesting to any of my listeners.
It might be edited out.
No, I don't edit anything out. I just hope I didn't lose anybody. They shut it off. Oh, we're not talking about like the cool fun stuff anymore. Like, yeah, I don't know.
No, but listen,
you're one of my only friends that have like a take on stuff.
Yeah, but it's going to like redefine our lives. That more people need to pay attention to.
How is that going to define American life? So yeah, let's go. Well, how does that affect the average business person here and the average American? So like, let's take
number one. It limits who you can do business with, right? Like we have a global economy, and they're developing their own economic system. So depending on how many allies Russia's able to pull in, you're not going to be able to do business with them. Like the United States government will issue Like U.S. Department of Treasury says you cannot do business with them. I'll give you an example. When we were in Moscow, one of the big sponsors of our fights was Russia's largest petroleum producer. They're on a Treasury list today. They're because they destabilized Ukraine. So like if you were in the gas and oil business, you can't do business with them. McDonald's left Russia. Starbucks left Russia. Like think about that. So like if you invested in any of those companies, it limits the economic opportunity. And those are just like big picture items. Like it's going to change the way America does business. Our foreign policy is going to change. Our domestic policy is going to change. And oh, by the way, everybody has nuclear weapons. So let's not forget about that. That's the big picture. But I don't know, man. I wish I had a solution for it. It would be nice if like when we were over there, we really bought into bridging the two cultures with sports and athletics and entertainment. And I felt like we were getting really close to that. But now I think our countries are just so far apart that they probably will be for a lifetime. They have been since 1948. So think about it, 80 years, it hasn't gotten much better.
Do you think Putin is, how do you think Putin really feels about Trump?
I think he views Trump as not a threat.
Just because he's wild and loose cannon, like he just could, like,
I mean, it depends on
just
how,
talks, right?
Depends on how. It depends on how conspiratorial you want to get.
Well,
I mean,
for the podcast, we get a little bit conspiracy.
The Russian oligarchs were investing in Trump Tower in the 1980s, so he's had long-standing relationships with Russia. In fact, when I was in Moscow, there were talks about him building a Trump Tower in Moscow. It was never completed.
But do you also think that Trump has the ability to negotiate with someone like that in a way that?
After watching the debate the other night, I think Biden's negotiating with himself.
Sure, but like at the end of the day, like, do you think that there's any, like, because Trump will bring in the money side of things to Putin, and like, will Trump be able to give them things that they think they're going to want to, like, to keep more of a peaceful?
I don't know what their view on him is now. Because,
it'll be interesting.
He made comments.
He's still got to keep face. I mean,
he made comments in 16 and 17 and 18 about reducing NATO's influence in Europe, and NATO's considering 2 new members. So I think that's what this whole thing's about. Putin just doesn't want NATO forces on his borders. And is that unreasonable? I don't know if it is. Like we wouldn't really tolerate Russian assets in Cuba.
Yeah, what's up with that? How come we still can't go to Cuba? Like, just
I know, man. We had a chance to go to Cuba like 10 years ago.
Yeah, you were telling me about that through the cigar guys.
Yeah, through
remember the cigar guys. Like they had the.
Let's not plug them, dear. Though they're great dudes, but let's not plug them.
We won't.
No free advertising.
Yeah, no, they gotta pay. They gotta pay
because they didn't take us to Cuba. I always wanted to go there. I want to go there before.
Because you can get like you can get special passes to go if you're like doing like certain things, right? Like there's like 12 things that you have to be doing to be able to go to Cuba. You can't just go stay in America for 5 nights, right?
We got to work on that.
Well, you're the guy that knows how to do all the.
I don't know how to do that.
But you know how to write grants. You know you do all this stuff. You should be able to definitely figure out.
Over the weekend when I got a little time, let's see if we can plan a trip to Cuba, even for 3 days.
I mean, shoot, it's closer than going to Cayman. I was just in the Grand Cayman, and Cuba's even closer. I mean, it's like literally right there.
You could actually row.
We could probably take a boat. Like we could rent a boat from Miami and like just go to Cuba, right?
Yeah, a couple hours.
I wonder what that place is like.
I don't know.
How different do you think Cuba is from Russia? Like, what did you see in Russia? Like, was it like old school? Like, was it very old school over there?
Both.
Was it? Yeah, you saw both sides. But Cuba's completely old school, right? Like,
yeah,
like it's like 1950s America.
1950s cars.
It's like 1950s America. It's like frozen in time.
They got good food, good music, good cigars.
Yeah, good people. I mean, I heard the people are very like,
it'd be fun, and we got to try to figure that out.
That would be interesting.
We'll shoot remote from there.
That was a big rabbit trail.
I appreciate your efforts to try to bring it back around.
Yeah,
you don't even know where to go.
No.
Did you see that? He was going to ask me an open-ended question, which he never does. Because he had no recovery.
I was going to say, what would you like to chat about next?
I don't know, man. Is this the first time one of your interviews has gone completely off the rails?
No.
Okay, that's good.
It goes off the rails.
I don't want to be notorious for that.
I'm trying to think now, right back into like, where was the listener at before we went on that Russia kick? It was just fascinating to me. So like, And then like, where were we at? What were they still wanting to know from the previous parts of the interview? Like, where do they want me to go next?
I think the most interesting thing was we were invited to this like big rock show outside the Kremlin. We got to...
You like a Taylor Swift concert?
No, it was weirder than that. Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit was there because he married a Russian national. So like Putin brought him in, and then he had Roy on stage. So we went to this like really cool concert. There was like 20,000 people screaming the Limp Bizkit songs that I barely remembered because they came out in college when, I probably hurt more brain cells than I helped. And so that was cool. Like we got to run around with them, and we got to drive cars through Red Square. That was pretty cool. They like shut it down to traffic, and we were like racing cars through Red Square with the Kremlin behind us and Lenin's tomb and like all that stuff. Like that was like pretty wild. Like that was like one of those like out of body experiences that like you never get to do again. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like where they have like their military parades and stuff. It was cool just connecting with like normal people in Moscow. Like, because we went to a lot of events, and I had a translator with me. She was really super cool. Spoke like 7 languages. Was educated at Oxford. Like, so she would like bring people over for us to like interact with, and it was just neat, like trying to see like what their perspective was, like people our age, like what's life like for them, and what are their goals, and what's it like growing up there.
I just thought of my next move with you.
What's that?
What does Steve Toprani think about that he hasn't done, that he's kind of curious about, that like that he would like to explore, just hasn't got there yet, hasn't found the opportunity, but like it kind of just keeps pinging in your soul somewhere?
And
like,
you know what? You're wise, dude. You're very wise. You brought us right back to the beginning. It was the question I didn't finish answering. I want to write. And I just haven't been able to like confront myself to sit down and put myself in a position to do it. I have some friends, I was a lit minor in college. A lot of people don't know that about me. And one of my like closest like friends in this world, he was one of my English professors, and like he and I text each other all the time, and he sends me like these like incredible brain droppings, like, and I've always thought about like going with him and like trying to like unearth some of these stories and put them into like something that'd be interesting to read, but like I just haven't gotten past my own mental block. I think I need more time to be reflective so I could like tell something meaningful other than just something cool. You know what I mean? Like I think there's meaning in everything.
The lesson that you learned through that experience, or what the reader should get out of that experience, rather than just a cool action story.
I mean, it would be like a self-help autobiography. Is like what I'm envisioning. Because like, a couple years ago, I was really frustrated with my own personal growth. I decided to go get an MBA in leadership because I wanted to study like leaders. Like I wanted to perfect that craft. Like. Part of it is to help Will become a better leader. And like I think there's messaging and stories in there. And that's why I'm like really in awe of what you do as a sort of a motivational leader, is that you tell an authentic story in a way that captures hearts and minds and makes them look at their own life differently. I want to be able to do that. I just haven't figured out the vehicle yet. Like, and I think it's really cool that, for me, I think my vehicle is like writing, but I don't even know if people read books anymore. Maybe an audio.
Well, they listen to books. I mean, right? Well, here it depends. It depends on who it is. If it's a lot of your attorney people, they probably read, right? If it's your scholarly people and your educator, because you got to remember, you are so diverse. I mean, you hang out with very diverse.
Weird collection of people.
Well, no, everybody. You hang out with like a palette of the world. Like you hang out with everyone on every spectrum, and so I think that people are going to digest your book in different ways, just like, that they've created, media for that. They have Audible books, they have the Kindle,
for sure.
They have the actual like hard,
those things.
The actual, things that collect
order
dust.
on Amazon.
Yeah, they're just here for looks, right? Like,
right.
It's just here for that.
I want to be
it's
able
art.
I want to be able to get to that stage.
And so what do you think? What's holding you back? What do you think? There's some underlying fear? Do you think that there's something that you don't really want to? There's something you want to talk about, but you don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah, probably.
Like what?
I don't know. That's a cool question. It's putting meaning to what would otherwise seem like a series of random events that just happened over time, right? Like my DA days, I'd like to tell that story because I think it would make good theater. Like I think it could turn into like a manuscript. But I don't want to just tell a dark story to tell a dark story. Like I want to describe the evolution. You know what I mean? And like the way it shapes you. Like every experience I've had has shaped me in some way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I agree. And I'm kind of with you. I haven't wrote a book yet, and I feel compelled to, and almost for the same reason that you do. I just haven't been able to figure out because I'm thinking, all right, I'll do it in 10 years when I have more perspective. But I know in 10 years, based on that thinking, that I'll be like, oh, I need to do it in another 10 years because there's going to be more perspective.
I heard you say something in the boardroom before our conversation started today. And you're talking to a young professional guy who's wants to be entrepreneurial. And you said to him, like, what's your holdup? Like, what are you waiting for? That last puzzle piece. And in some ways I'm doing the same thing. Like I want that last piece to say, aha, here it is. Maybe the process is just doing it.
Oh no, that's going to be then someone else writing your book for you after you're dead.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want it to be
because then it's going to be an investigative story. Like someone like me or Will are going to have to go around and interview all these people, put all the pieces together, and then we can write the Steve Toprani
the right way. You know what I mean?
But now you could be in charge of it, from that side of it. But
that's on my list, man.
But here's the thing. But that's why people write multiple books, though. Because here's the deal. So you write let's put this out there in the atmosphere.
Speak it to existence.
How old are you right now?
45.
45 years old. So let's say you write a book by the time your 47th birthday, your book is published. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I like it. Where are we going?
And you just get it done. You just write it, and it doesn't necessarily, I would tell you that it doesn't necessarily have to have every single thing that you want. Because I know what it's like in your mind. Everything's got to be perfect. It's the imperfection of that actually makes it perfect if you allow it to just flow out of you. And I'm telling you this right now because I'm giving myself the same advice.
It's good coaching. Like what you're doing in this experience is telling little snippets of someone's life, right? Like we talked about a whole bunch of different things. None of those things really in a fluid, we hope for this podcast are like fluid and interesting, but like it wouldn't make a great book.
Yeah, but you're interesting.
But if you lay those things down, thank you. If you lay those things down and you bring them together with somebody who knows how to bring them together, that might be like the secret sauce I'm trying to find.
But
right? Like that
it depends. It depends. Is your goal to have like a #1 bestseller and turn it into movies, or is your bestseller just to write as a journal and therapeutic experience?
You know what it is? The best book I ever read, and this is going to sound really friggin' dark. It was a gift a longtime friend of my family gave to me. It was a book written by Judge Masmano, who's from Pittsburgh, who presided over the Nuremberg prosecutions after World War II. And he didn't try to write a history book. He didn't try to write anything other than give a recollection of what he observed and what he felt. And it's the most powerful. I'm not even sure it's in print. I'm not even sure you could find it online. I've tried to. But he presided over the trial of the Nazi doctors. And he wasn't trying to solve like why these people tortured and scientifically experimented on a class of the human race. But he just told it from a very matter-of-fact perspective.
He was pontificating.
Yeah, this is what I saw. This is how it made me feel. This is how I reacted. Like, that's always been like the writing style that I always thought would be.
Well, you could do that now, but then you could do a sequel in like 10 years. And like, then,
if I have 10 years in me, I don't know.
I mean,
we don't know that.
Well,
but,
that's why you should get the book.
Right.
That's why you should get the book done now. And here's the other thing, and you probably don't know this because I hang out in this like entrepreneurial world where like I hang out with a lot of authors and people that want to like, brand their story and get their stuff out there. Well, now they have people that like they have these book writers or ghostwriters or whatever that'll talk to you just like I am, record it all, get the stories out of you, and then pop you out a book. And then with the help of a little AI and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and like just to like make it more interesting or polish it up. And you just make a couple quick edits, dude. It's all the stuff. I mean, you went to school, dude. You like you had to write so much stuff probably in your lifetime, and you've read so much stuff. I can write about anybody
else but myself.
Yeah. And so let me ask you another question. Have you ever been in therapy before?
No, I should.
Let me ask you. Yeah. How do you?
My wife's a therapist. Right?
Well, yeah.
So
and she probably does it for you.
Couch time with her is not what you'd think it would be, man. She likes to diagnose diagnosed me.
That could be one of her things that keeps her so hooked to you. It's like that, like you're like her biggest study. Like,
work in progress.
Yeah,
How's
she should. I want to see her book too. Like, it'd be cool if you guys both wrote a dual book together, like where you write about your whatever you need to write about, and then she writes about you. No, and then she writes about you. No, then she writes about you. They both come out at the same time, and then you guys are on talk shows all across the country talking about this thing where you write your life story and you write all of that.
Betty, you're totally cutting down my life story, though. I don't know if I want her involved in that. No,
hold on a second. Right? But then I see where we're going. But I want to read her book then about watching you go through all of this. And like what she, like, just like the Nuremberg guy wrote, like she writes like that, where it's just her thoughts, feelings, and things like stuff like that, because that would be fascinating to the human experience.
Could be, yeah,
very fascinating.
Picking up what you're putting down.
Very fascinating to the human experience.
I just got to come
because she's got the inside, like she's been on the inside of this, whether she realizes it or not. From her point of view, that'd be fascinating. Wow, but you got to get this thing done.
Yeah, let's put it on the list.
What would it be called?
I don't know. I never had a title for it. I don't know. I don't know what it would be yet. It'll come to me. I just need to commit to doing it. That's for me. I need to.
Let me ask you, because you've been through some hard stuff in your life, stuff that most people probably shouldn't ever have to see or see. You know, especially being the DA, that side of stuff, but. And dealing with a lot of stuff, and then dealing with the feelings of like sometimes guilt and how, you know, a lot of us guys that are like this, we don't know how to share our feelings, and because we always got to be the tough guy, hold it all together.
Yeah, for sure.
When's the last time that you sat by yourself and cried?
Man, that's a good question. I can't remember the last time, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Can't.
Do you feel like that's? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I probably suppress a lot. I really suppress a lot.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know, man. Because I always have to feel like I have to be on my game. You know what I mean? Like I can't have a crack in the veneer. And that goes back to my DA days. You know, I stood at a press conference hours after my next door neighbors, who were like my actual surrogate parents, were murdered. Right? And I had to stand there and brief the cameras on what happened. And like there was no time to mourn them, to think about them. You know, and I was in their home. I crossed the crime tape, saw them executed in their house. You know what I mean? And you had to move forward. It was like, all right, this isn't going to go cold. We're going to arrest somebody. We're going to follow the evidence. We're going to have a trial. We're going to do all these things. That was in 2008. I still don't talk about it. This is the most I've ever talked about it. People have tried to interview me on it for years. Like people that covered me when I was DA, they write books, right? Like one of my friends, he writes for the Post-Gazette. He called me one time. He's like, I really want to talk to you about that Springer case. I'm not ready. I even talked to their kids about it. You know, their son Chad was my best friend growing up. Best man in each other's weddings. I won't talk to him about it. You know, that's the nature of it. It's funny. I was with Washington County's current DA. We were at 4th of July celebration last year. And somebody lit off a firework in the parking lot we were standing in, and he jumped out of his shoes. And it immediately took me back. And I just like grabbed his hands. I was like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like he's living it. He's walking it. And people carry that. The ones that don't do the job the right way don't. But like there's a lot to it. I've always used it as a motivator. You know what I mean? Like chin up, hammer through it, get the job done. Probably not the best thing for your for your well-being. You know what I mean, Ben? Like it's probably not the greatest. And look, I know what you've struggled with the loss of your brother, and that's why I still stay in that space to some degree. I'm gonna tell you. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah,
it's probably a good time to tell it. So last week I was in New Orleans on our way to Manning Camp with Will. My buddy Troy and his son was with us, and the boys were tired. They were back at the hotel room, so we went to the hotel bar, carousel bar at the Monteleone. Really cool space. They have this revolving carousel people are sitting at. And there was a couple there. And the guy had a Steeler hat on, and I think I had on like maybe a Steeler shirt or something. And as they were going around the carousel, it makes a rotation every 15 minutes. They kept looking at me. I'm like, oh, they want to come over and talk to her from Pittsburgh. the wife and the husband come over. Troy and I are sitting on this lounge chair, and she says, "Are you Steve?" And I said, "Toprani." Like I knew, like, here we go, right? And she's like, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't." She's like, "Well, I'm from Montgomery County, Maryland." And she said, "When you were district attorney, I sent you," and it came to me like that. I don't know how it happened. I said, "You sent me a packet about your brother." She's like, "You remember?" I said, "Yeah, her brother died in 1989 under very suspicious circumstance. There was allegations that the police covered it up and made it appear that it was accidental when it was a homicide." And she sat down next to me and she said, "I can't believe you're here." She said, "We were in Houston. We're doing a tour, visiting family across the South. We decided to stop in New Orleans. It was raining. We thought this bar looked cool. We sat here." So I said, "Come sit." We ordered drinks. Troy's very perceptive. So he like sat with the husband and I sat with her. And we just started talking. And I said, "I remember every detail of what you sent me. I tried to look into it. I signed investigators to look into it." I said, "The problem was we just didn't have enough evidence. Witnesses died. Statements were changed. We couldn't reach people. They didn't want to talk about it." I said, "But I'm here to validate everything that you wrote me." I said, "Just because we couldn't prove a case and bring an arrest doesn't mean that you were wrong." And she sat there and she cried, and her husband said, like, he said, "You did more for her in 30 minutes than 30 years of therapy." And that's what keeps me going, man. Like, opportunities like that. Like, what are the chances we'd be on a random Wednesday night in June in New Orleans at a bar where we have some sort of recognition of each other, right? And she had the time to sit there and talk with me. And I got her phone number and I was like, "Listen, if you ever want to talk about it again, you know, if you're ever visiting the area, stop in." And it was just really cool. And I just felt like really blessed to be able to have that recollection of those events. Things I hadn't thought about that in 15 years. And it all came back like that. And that's God at work, man. I'm not like an overly like spiritual person, but like that's bigger than us. And to be able to sit there and share that. But my point in telling that story is like so many people carry silent suffering that I've always felt that's been my call. Not holding an office, not running for office. Like you could do that on such a small level. You know what I mean? Like when my neighbor calls and says, "My kid got arrested at school, can you help him?" Like, is that how I need to make my living? No. Is it probably time away from the things I should be doing? Yes. But I'll usually answer that call because if I can make their situation a little bit better, I think I'm living like a meaningful life. That's what it's about. That's what I'd like to tell in a book, right? Like those
That's
types
the title.
of stories.
Silent Suffering.
Ew.
And I think, or I feel, the reason that you're so good at that is because you also could be going through that.
Of course. Yeah, we all do.
But you deflect it by, and I talked about this before on the podcast, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We're driven. It's wired in us. We use helping others as the addiction or as like the thing that like kind of like makes us, it's another part of our armor that we build up because we're really trying to figure out how to help ourselves.
Of course. You're right.
And we disguise it as like, "Oh, we're helping others. Oh, I got to go help this person. Oh, I got to go help this person. Hey, babe, hey, I got to go help this person. Oh, hey, I got to go do this." And we keep doing because
You're right.
we're not able to sit with ourselves because we like have so much that we've been bearing our whole life. And we've never been able to like openly share like at the same level that lady was able to share with you. Mm-hmm. Like somebody needs to be able to do that with you.
Of course.
Who's that person that's going to like be like, who's the person that's going to meet you at the carousel bar at a random moment and like you're going to open up to them?
I don't know. Wait for that opportunity. You know what I mean?
But are you going to be open enough to be able to let go and just let it flow?
Yeah, that's the mystery, right? I mean, you're 100% right about that. It's how do you respond to those situations, right? How do you respond? How do you Because
it's not weakness. When
no,
I know, but
honestly,
tough guys,
though,
but tough guys, we build it up because we have to be the man. A lot of times it's like protecting people from what you're going to tell them to.
You know what I mean? There's
you tell yourself that. That's the ego. I feel like that's the ego right? telling yourself that to like keep you from not doing it.
I think the book's the way to do it, man. You got me focused on that.
Silent suffering.
I'm glad you write it down. I'm glad we have it on tape.
Silent suffering. Steve Toprani.
Listen, man.
Forward by Benjamin Fisher.
For sure, man. We can do it. I'm gonna call my buddy Phil. Tell him he's got to get his laptop out. We got some brainstorming to do.
I also think it would be helpful for you. One thing that's helped me in this period of life where I've been more reflective, and it's helped me become more present too with people rather than just go on to the next itch or like do the next thing or helps the next person, is like this art of podcasting and being able to just be completely present, right? Like we don't have our phones out.
No, I left mine in the other room.
Yeah, we don't. I don't even know what I'm doing. Like after this, like I am like just completely immersed, right? It's dark everywhere else except for these lights.
Couldn't tell you what time it is.
Couldn't even tell you what. You don't even know how long you've been talking, right? Like, and it's okay, right? It doesn't matter. But podcasting's been helpful. But even better is like I've been doing therapy. And like I always like was kind of against it. Oh, that's woo-woo. That's kind of weird. Like, you know, like what are they? And I think a lot of it has to do with finding a good therapist, finding somebody that like really can like, again, like you said, get the answers out of you, right? By asking the good questions, right? And then giving you a little education on maybe like how the brain works, because like a lot of it's trauma responses and things like that. Of like we've wired ourselves to protect ourselves, which is good, but like there's no grizzly bears coming. Now, in your case, you know.
Once upon a time there were.
Yeah, you never know. But like, and so again, which is even made you have to hardwire even harder, right?
Yep.
Because especially with, you know, that 4-year stint of your life, you know, and then, you know, going through that sports story. And I really appreciate you sharing that story about your neighbors. I've known about that for a while. And I know we've never talked about it.
I don't talk to anybody
because I'm actually afraid to talk to you about it, only because like the best part of me wants to talk to you about it. I'll talk to you about it off the air because I know that that's got to be really vulnerable. Because I can't even imagine like to grow up with people like that, and then have to be the guy. They have to like get in front of the cameras and talk about it like that, and then to be able to hold that in for so long. You're not supposed to have to do that.
Well, you are. Yeah. Like in some ways, I think that was why I was pulled. Well,
you were uniquely built for that, and God made you for that way, but not forever. It doesn't have to be that way forever. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and I believe that everything is connected through God. But like, I also don't think that we have to hold on to that forever, because the healing process is to embrace the pain and then be able to like help others.
It's the least thing that anybody talks about, and like I appreciate like your emotional response to that. 'Cause I know you're grieving your brother, and a lot of people carry all of that. Like what's weird is that like TV and society makes victims stigmatized, right? Like people respond to you one of two ways: they either avoid you, right, or they over invest, right, because they want to pull you through it. The reality is you need something in the middle. And, you know, it was a unique opportunity to be in that type of position, to get a community and a family through that. And I did that a lot. Like when I was DA, we went through a period, I think I had more homicides in a 6-month period than Allegheny County and Philadelphia County did. Like Washington County is a dangerous place. Like they don't put that on our like market reports, right? Like they don't put that on like real estate web pages.
I know they're trying to get people to move.
Yeah, but like shit happens there. You know, like we had like organized crime and stuff. And,
I even feel like weird deaths happen too. Not even criminal, like just people in car accidents down there. Like it is wild. Like it is just like people just like drive through like 88, dude. They get clipped.
Hit by trains.
Like yeah, like and then people jump off the Joe Montana Bridge. Like I mean, it is wild.
I was on my way to work in
fires.
One
there's
day,
fires. Like there's a fire every day somewhere. Like the old house burning out. Like it's wild to me, man. The pain of the valley.
People carry so much burden with them, and that's that's what I always tried to address, in some way, is like help people through those things. Look, you're motivating me to like stop my own like bullshit and actually like get out of my own way and make it happen. We'll see in a year from now if you can hold me accountable to it.
Here's the thing. You gotta figure out like,
and look at me. I'm invested. Like I'm sitting up on my chair.
I see you.
Like I'm invested in it. Like,
I see. Well, because here's how you're going to do it. You have to just pick the couple things that are important to you work wise, because you turn everything into a work. I mean, I watch you because and the only reason I can speak to that is because I do it. I know I do it.
But
too.
you think characters like us get drawn together? You know what I mean?
But like, so you're gonna have to pick a couple of things. You're either gonna have to pick like, okay, you got your nice little executive job at Tomco. You have, your kids. You got your, being present as a dad. Like, cool. Like, you don't have to help. It's time to help Steve, actually, a little bit. Because after you help Steve and go through the process of...
Probably be better helping everybody else. That's
on the other hand, I already know. I already know because I'm in the middle of that right now. And I feel more connected than ever before to humans, to be able to do even a better job, because I went through that period of like self-reflection, lots of tears, lots of crying, lots of being able to talk to like grown men about like these like things, and like just be able to hold space for people. And I know it kind of sounds woo and stuff like that, and it probably is a little bit, but that's where you get the balance, right? Because it can't always be tough guy superhero, but it also can't be cry every day like
can't get out of your bed,
corner. Right? Yeah. And so, but I think with both extremes, like that healing process brings you right back to center, to where you're completely present and you're not, oh my gosh, I gotta go help this person. I gotta help this, because it feels that need for approval sometimes, and that need to be like the man, the hero, that hero's journey, like, and we get addicted to that.
Yeah, it's a ride. You're right.
But
it's a ride.
but what I believe is that chat with the lady at the carousel dinner, that wasn't a ride. That was you holding space for her, validating her, hearing her. She's being seen and understood. That's all everyone wants.
Oh, anybody
that's
wants.
all your neighbors wanted. Right. That's all that like their whole families wanted. That's what your mom and dad's waiting for that, probably.
Sure.
Your wife's waiting for that. Your kids are definitely going to be learning from you. Do you want them? Here's what I say. This is the preacher coming out. Do you want your kids to grow up like that, to be like dad in that regard? And then you would tell me that it's not healthy. You just said it. Yeah. You just said it wasn't.
You're right. It's not.
And so, like, this is the greatest opportunity right now to impress upon Will and your daughter and the little guy. How old's the little guy now?
7. Force. Man, he's a force.
Yeah. But anyway, but that's what I think that we need to start teaching that generation is this healthy this healthy balance of like being able to have the good stuff, to chase the things, but like also then to like practice gratitude in the moment, slow down, speed up.
Life's lived right here in the present. I say it all the time. Like, you can't be looking back and forward at the same time. You got to live right here. And you're right. Like, what worries me about for our kids is they're growing up in the least authentic time in human history, right? Like, social media gives them a distorted view of everything. Everything. I'm not sure anything's real.
This is real.
Reality.
This is real. This is why I do it.
Yeah.
This is why I like because I actually care. Because and it's like, but it is, you're right. I don't have the most views. I don't get the most subscribers. It's not the sexiest content.
But you will.
It's not about that though. And it's like, it's interesting because I watch from the marketing side of me. Like, I see like all the polarizing stuff, like all the, like it gets all the clicks on all the feed, and like, because that's what people are addicted to, because that's what they're living in.
Yeah.
But this cycle right here, this is going to be the new currency.
I hope so.
20 years from now?
Yeah.
Oh, that you won't, especially with the way AI is going, and people are going to crave connection and community even more than they ever did before. And you're not going to just be able to buy that.
Yeah, they have the most access with the least connection. It's 1,000% true. And maybe that's the groundwork of what you're doing.
I'm trying. I need guys like you.
People.
I need guys like you to help me with that, though, to champion that cause. Because again, we have our shiny outer stories. We put bows and makeup on it, and and we make it look good on social media. When we turn the cameras on, like when we look into the camera,
yeah, it's a different situation.
Like we're all, hey, I'm happy, everything is great. But you also don't want to be the person, man, my life sucks all day. Yeah. But I think, but there's lessons, right? So that's when you have to write about the story. How did it make you feel? Just like you're the Nuremberg guy.
Yep.
How did it make you feel? How's it? And you can do that in short form. That's what I do love about social media. Yeah, you can literally just put like a little blurb about like that one little thing. You could literally write a blog about everything that we talked about. We probably talked about, I don't know, 40 different items that you could actually write a little story about. Context of the story, the actual story, how it made you feel, how I reflecting back, what I wish now with my older self, like what would I have done differently? And like, but now I'm so grateful that I have that experience and here's why, and here's another story. And then you don't necessarily tell that story, but you put the link there so that when you write about the other story, now people can just keep going. And then by the time you have a collection of those, there's your book.
We're in the sweet spot to do that, right? Like we're in the stage of our life where you could be a little reflective. You have some experience to draw from, but you also have encouragement about the future, right? So that, like the way I look at like the human journey, like when you're a kid, you're on a quest for knowledge. Like that's what school sets you up for. Like learn about the way the planets orbit the sun. Like, is that really important for you as a person? Probably not. Then as you grow into adulthood, you start to gain experience. And the byproduct of experience is wisdom. And those two things are completely different, right? Like, what's the saying? Like knowing that tomatoes are fruit, but you don't want to eat it, like drink its juice, like that's knowledge, like, so you always want to know like the difference. And I think like we're in a unique position in our 40s to be able to look back enough to tell something that has meaning, but not so disconnected. It's like the old man that sits in McDonald's with his coffee crew and talks about fixing the world that they don't even understand anymore. Like we're in the middle of it.
Well, and we're still present too because we have our kids. We're still in the middle of our careers, and like like we're still like we're actually able to live it and tell about it at the same time. And the time that we're in, we have all this technology to be able to share and create our own stuff. Like the media is not well. Maybe in your case, the media was coming for you because you entered that world. But like in my case, ain't no one coming to do a story on me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like, you got to create, we have the equipment, we have all the stuff. We're broadcasting on our own, like they probably don't even let you do this in Russia.
No.
Isn't that wild? That's wild to me. Like,
couldn't do it.
That's why I love America. Like no matter how bad it is, no matter how I hate the two-party system, like you said, like it's just because I'm very like you, like there's some things I'm like this, there's some things I'm like that. I don't even know how it's two sides.
Why do we have to put ourselves in those boxes?
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to put myself in a box, but it's like I love this country only because it just allows us to be express free. Like we can express like whatever we want, and like no one's ever gotten
limitations.
No one's gotten in trouble yet. Yep. I mean, like, and hopefully that never ends.
They put it in the First Amendment for a reason. Number one.
Well, listen, this was a little longer of an episode than my guys are used to listen to, my ladies out there, but we appreciate you tuning in. Steve, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Man, this was a fun experience. I've been looking forward to this. I would have liked to have been closer to 1 than 100, but I see utility in doing it at this stage of the game, man. It's been fun watching you grow, watching you do this, and I wish you all the best. And you're doing some real stuff, and I like that.